This edition of MacVoices is supported by the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter to keep you up on all the latest from MacVoices. Watch or listen to MacVoices straight from your email client. Sign up at macvoices.com/newsletter and stay up to date. Hi, I'm Chuck Joyner, and this is MacVoices, the talk of the Apple community. Folks, this time we're back to talk to another Take Control author about a very, very, very timely book, Take Control of Mojave, and we have Scholle McFarland back with us. Scholle, welcome. It's great to see you.
Hi there. Great to be here, Chuck.
Yeah, that's one of the big things I hear on podcasts, I hear on the news, I hear everywhere. Mojave or Mojave? And Joe set us straight, and now I've got to break my habit. So you had this book out right ready, day and date when Mojave landed. And I think that's just phenomenal because there were so many people that were anxious. They'd been running the betas with pretty good results, not always perfect, but pretty good results. But this gave them a definitive guide to getting the most out of the new OS.
Yeah, we've gotten pretty good at this. So we had a pre-release version out a few weeks ago. And then we were able to wrap everything up so that the final version was out for people yesterday when the software shipped.
So let's talk just a little inside baseball for just a second. I would have thought that having the two versions, the pre-release version and then the actual release version, would be a little bit more stressful. But you seem to think it's a little bit easier on you as the author?
Well, when we first did it, it was stressful because we didn't really have the hang of it. But now there usually is a set of features that are mostly done. And that's what we did. I guess I was just really good at picking which features those were this time. So the pre-release version covered everything that was looking solid. And then I went on basically to do the last part of the book on the things that were more in flux. So it meant that we had it all wrapped up just really in good time this go around.
So let's dig into this a little bit because, again, a lot of people got really excited over the public beta. I was surprised at how many people I knew that were running the public beta. Mm-hmm. And just for the record, I was not running the public beta. And I have not upgraded to Mojave for one big reason. I'm probably still about a week and a half away from it because I have a big event coming up at the office, and I don't want to take any chances with anything breaking. So I've got a stable system right now, and I'm not messing with it until after that.
That's very wise, Chuck.
Well, I'd like to think so. Either that or just paranoid. But having said that, that means that once that event is over, that one of the first things I want to do is upgrade to Mojave and start playing with it. So what are going to be some of the biggest differences or changes that I'm going to notice when the Mac restarts and I'm off and running?
Well, there are some differences to the Finder. And one of the things that people have been most excited about is dark mode. People are really excited about that feature. If you haven't heard of it before, it's basically changes the color of your interface so that it's dark instead of light. And that's something that's really popular with people who work with media, with photographs or video, because it makes the details really pop. It's also really popular with coders because, especially if your code is in different colors, it's really easy to see. And then I think people just think it's cool. I think that's really the main thing. So that is a aesthetic thing that I think a lot of people will enjoy playing with. And it is nice if you work at night or if you have issues with your vision. A lot of people find the white text on black background easier to read because there's so much contrast. But it is just cool looking. And in Apple's fashion, there are little cool touches all through the interface. For instance, if you open Apple Maps and you're using dark mode, all the maps are night maps. So everything's dark and it's cool. That's really a fun one, but it is a fundamental way that your Mac looks. So I'm sure that's going to be the first thing a lot of people play with. The next thing is probably stacks. And that is another Finder change. And basically what it does is if you're the type of person like I am who scatters files all over your desktop because it's really, metaphorically a desk and you've got your kind of stuff all over your desk. Stacks lets you, with just one click, sort everything on your desktop in the way of your choosing. So the default way is by kind. So for instance, right now on my desk, I have a pile of documents, PDF documents, images, music, movies, and others. It just magically sorts them. So if you save something on your desktop, it automatically goes into those piles. And it is, a little bit of a stress reliever if you look at your desktop and it looks so neat and orderly. The cool thing about it is that if you are the type of person who really gets into this sort of thing, you can tag your files and then sort by tags. So for instance, if you had a lot of client files and you tagged your documents, your images, all the stuff you're using for work with that client, it would sort into piles or stacks based on that. And if something has two tags, it will appear in both the stacks. So that can be a pretty neat way to organize things if you're the type of person who really will take advantage of that. If you're not, and you're just using the defaults, then it is handy. Like if you have a ton of documents, it might be easier to click the documents file stack and then look just in there for the document you're looking for instead of all over your desktop. So those are probably the two things people will notice right away, is those two options for changing the way the Finder works.
I want to be real clear on stacks. Does stacks just work for stacks on the desktop, or is that a metaphor that can be used in, say, the documents folder or any other folder?
It is on the desktop. So most people are familiar with, we've had for many, many years, a stack in the dock, and that was for your downloads folder. It appears by default as a stack. And you notice it in your dock as it looks like a pile of icons. I mean, they really take it as the metaphor. The last one you put there is on top. So you see the little icon and its preview if it's an image. So this just takes that idea from the dock and puts it right on the desktop.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. How about overall performance, Scholle? Is this a performance release, do you feel, or is it primarily a features release? It feels, I'll say this, it feels like a performance release and a polishing release, if you will, as opposed to, look, all these brand new whiz-bang features other than dark mode. Dark mode at WWDC, when that was announced, I think that was
People
the biggest roar of the day.
They really go nuts. I would say that actually High Sierra was our performance release. This, to be honest, is our privacy release. So that is, I would say, the biggest thing that Apple clearly focused on with Mojave is putting privacy features all the way through it, and also doing a huge overhaul of all the documentation of privacy features. So, we all know the common experience of every time you do a user agreement for any app that you ever put on your Mac, that it's like page after page of legalese, and you never read it, you just click agree, and that's it. It was really notable to me that as I was, as you turn on iCloud and you launch the App Store for the first time that you're opening a lot of your apps on Mojave, there is very clearly written, easy to understand privacy information for all of those Apple apps. So just on that level, just that you actually can understand the writing is pretty notable. That's not an experience any of us have had before. And then all through the OS and Safari in particular, there are tons of privacy features. I think that for me, looking at this release, it's clear that Apple has decided they are going to be the company that's on consumer sides, and they are going to be the ones to kind of intervene in kind of the crazy privacy breaches that we've seen in the past year, all the big scandals that happened this year. So that's actually what I would say. I don't know if everybody's been talking about that, but from my perspective, I think that's probably the most notable thing about this release.
That's really interesting. I've seen a couple little things about it. I think one of the articles said, that there are all these pop-ups that you're going to have to wade through to give permissions, which is something that up to this point we've been able to avoid. But on the other hand, this is the world we live in. And the fact that Apple is giving you that kind of fine-grained control, in my mind, yes, it's a little bit annoying, but we all know that security and privacy is annoying. But it's if you're happy, letting everybody know all of your business and maybe steal your identity, then by all means, go use another operating system that I won't mention. But if you want, something better, you're right. I think Apple seems to really be taking a stand on that.
I think most of us have had the experience that the opposite of privacy is convenience. I mean, that's the trade-off that we've had to make. But the operating system does a pretty good job. So the pop-ups that you're talking about are everyone, when you launch Mojave for the first time, you're going to get a lot of warnings saying this and that wants access to your camera or your microphone or to data. And it is really annoying and sometimes a little confusing at the beginning, especially because some apps don't have the warnings that come up are not really that easy to understand. So this is actually a gotcha with Mojave, is especially the two big things that will trigger weird warnings are backup programs and any kind of automation programs that have to work across your system. But once you sanction the activity, like right at the beginning, you don't see anything else again. And this is how it works. Basically, in system preferences, in the security preference, there are a lot of categories now. Before we had some basic things that macOS asked us about, but now there's a bunch of added categories. So in particular, your mic and your camera, any app that wants to use those has to get permission. And this is pretty significant because if you go around the web and you look, like what's the advice for dealing with the possibility of someone hacking your camera and surveilling you or hacking your mic, the answer that's given is to put a Band-Aid over your camera. I mean, it's kind of a hack and a very sticky hack at that. So this is the attempt to make a little bit more elegant of a solution. You have to approve that use. And then anytime that you want, you can go into the security preference pane and you actually can see a list of all the apps that you've given permission to, and you can check or uncheck them. So you can take back the permission or give permission as you see fit. And you can see very easily what's there. It's not like a mystery what has gotten access to your camera or your mic. But that's not where it stops. It's not just the camera and the mic. It's also to your data. So, for instance, a time machine backup or to your mail contacts or your mail messages, things like that. If a program wants to get access to that, they also need to get permission. And you can see that also in those preferences. So that's pretty profound. It really gives you, it's not just about getting permission. It's also about giving you an easy way to see what's going on. Like you just see a list and you check or uncheck, so that it makes it a lot easier to be aware of what's going on with your machine and with your data. And that's a pretty big deal because those are things I think people didn't used to worry about very much. People who did worry about it seemed kind of paranoid, but they weren't. They weren't paranoid. And I think there's a lot of proof of that this year, that actually it's a reasonable thing to start being concerned about not only what's happening with your actual computer, but also what's happening online. And that's the second set of really big privacy features, is a bunch of enhanced stuff in Safari. Last year with High Sierra, Apple introduced basically a feature that let you stop advertisers from tracking you. So the kind of classic thing where I think I talked about it last time, where you go to Zappos and you look at a pair of shoes and then you're on Facebook and there's that advertisement for that exact pair of shoes. And you're like, what? So basically they had cookies and they're track you from place to place and they're following you around gathering data. So last year they kind of clamped down on that. This year they go a little farther with Safari, and they target digital fingerprinting. So that is a really pretty creepy thing, which is that when your browser sends a request for information, it sends basic system data. So basically, I'm on a Mac, I'm using Safari, but also like, here are the fonts I have installed. Basic stuff so that when you get the information back, it's going to be formatted for you. But what was happening is that advertisers were creating a profile based on your system information. So for instance, maybe you had some unusual fonts. Well, that's a way to know that it's you. So even if you had on private browsing, advertisers that were using this digital fingerprinting could still be tracking you. So Apple now is intervening in that. And basically, when Safari sends out that system information about you, it keeps it generic. So it doesn't send anything that's anything but the generic basic, I'm a Mac user kind of information. So that's to try to interrupt that another way that people were being tracked. And that's a pretty big deal too, because, I think everybody would like, I think the trade-off between convenience and privacy is becoming a little clearer, that maybe we need a little bit more privacy. There's some other things. The privacy features really go on and on. There's also some work on passwords. So year after year, we tell people they need long, strong passwords, but it's very inconvenient to have passwords, especially that you can't remember. It makes people really paranoid that they don't know their password. Safari is kind of putting another effort in there to make sure you do that. And what happens now is if you sign up for a service or you make a new account on the web, Safari will populate that password field with a 20-character long password. So a really long, unique password. By default, like you don't have to, before it could make a password for you, but you had to click a little key icon, like you had to kind of know you could do it. Now it just appears there, and you have to click, do not use this strong password to make it go away. Like you have to very consciously say, no, I'm not going to use this safe thing. So they're getting a little more insistent about that. Also, when you go into Safari preferences and you look at your passwords, they have a list of all your everything that autofills in Safari for you. And every time you reuse a password, it's flagged. There's a warning icon, and it tells you don't do that because that's an unsafe practice. So they've really tried to reveal and not just make it easier, but actually make it not just make it easier to do the right thing privacy-wise, but they've made it harder to not do it. So they've made it inconvenient to not do the thing that they want you to do, which is a stronger gesture of trying to make sure Mac users start doing these things. And then there's some other little things too, like if you have two-factor identification, and you sign up for something, and then your iPhone pings with a little security code. Now that will autofill in Safari. So it sees that that's happened, and it will autofill that code for you, which is really nice because sometimes those codes happen kind of fast, and so that makes it that much easier for you. There's all sorts of things like that all through the operating system, and Apple itself is not immune or exempt from privacy concerns. They have some things to let you control how much information they get about you too. Some of the new apps that are coming to the Mac this time, Stocks and News, as well as the App Store, all have, they all gather information so that Apple can send targeted advertising to you. But they make it pretty clear how you can see exactly what information that is, and then how to stop that, how to opt out. So they have both revealed what they might be doing, which is just like all the advertisers that they're trying to stop doing these things, and I think made it pretty clear how to stop that. Like there's clear ways to reset or to turn that off. So that is, I think, the biggest thing going on in Mojave, I would say. All through everything, there are these privacy features.
A couple things that I want to follow up on.
Yeah.
When you said that in Safari, that you have the list of the passwords that you can look at, is that keychain? Is keychain gone, or is that a separate thing inside Safari that is separate from keychain?
Well, that's really interesting. It gets a little confusing. It's true. Those passwords, I believe, are kept in your iCloud keychain. So like you have access to those on your iPhone or on your iPad if you're using iCloud keychain, but they're actually tracked. Those ones that are auto-filled, you can go look at them in Safari, and those are the ones that you have access to with these privacy features. You actually, since we're talking about passwords, there's a Siri feature now too that you can ask Siri, show me my Netflix password, and it will open up Safari preferences to that page. You do have to type in your password to see the passwords, because that wouldn't be very secure if you could just ask Siri and it blurted it out. But it goes straight to, for instance, the Netflix entry. So it's another way to make it a little easier for you to get to passwords that you might need.
We're turning this into a security show, but that's okay. The 20-character passwords that Safari advocates, are they the usual? Not the usual. Are they just the gobbledygook passwords that are completely random, or are they human phrases that you might be able to actually remember if you really needed to? Or
they're gobbledygook. Yeah, they're meant to not be, to be as secure as possible. But different websites can actually, and I'm not super clear on the technical details of this, so I won't pretend that I am. They can specify, for instance, if they have a certain length or certain, some require that you have numbers and capital letters and this and that. They can actually, there's something that they can do to specify that then Safari can see and help with.
Yeah, it cracks me up when I go to certain websites, certain financial service company websites, and they say, give us an 8-character password. So you try to put in a 20. No, we can't take that. Like, come on, move into the 21st century.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah. Time to change banks.
They'll catch up.
Yeah. The last thing that you mentioned it, and I hardly ever hear anybody talk about it in any way, shape, or form, and that's private browsing. And, I had a discussion with somebody the other day about how private is private browsing. And I had to admit, I don't know. I mean, I know that I've run my own little experiments of opening a private browsing window, going to Amazon, looking at something, and then seeing if it follows me around the web, and it never does.
Yeah.
But what you were saying about the fingerprinting makes a lot of sense. But at this point with Safari, how private is private browsing?
I always browse in private browsing on my iOS devices. I think it's a good idea. I mean, it's another convenience versus privacy thing, because when you do private browsing, it doesn't keep a history. It doesn't keep all those things that can help you move from place to place more easily. So no cookies, no history, your search history is not recorded. All that kind of stuff doesn't happen. I think it's a good basic thing. Like if you're doing anything that you think might be sensitive, like whether you're searching for health information or something like that, which, you'd rather not anybody else know that you're doing, I think it's a good idea to do private browsing. So it's a good basic thing. It's just that, it's kind of an arms race. Advertisers continue to try to figure out ways that they can make more money from us, and following you around and having all this rich data about people, just gives them incredible amounts of ability to do tailored advertising in ways that have never been possible. So they want to do it.
And we've had the debate here, and I'm sure you've heard a dozen of them, about is that necessarily a bad thing? Wouldn't I rather see ads about something that I'm genuinely interested in, as opposed to something that I, couldn't care less about? So
Well, it depends whether they stick with just advertising. That's the problem. So, I mean, we have some pretty high profile, the Cambridge Analytica scandal where, it's not just for advertising that the information is being collected. So that's the thing. Or there was recently a big article about Google Maps in the New York Times, and it was about how if you have Google Maps on and accessing your location data on your phone all the time, you can actually go online and do a data dump, and you can see everywhere you've been that you've had your phone in your pocket. It's a little creepy. Yeah. It's a little creepy. There's a college student, maybe even a high school student, who did a visualization app. So you could visualize it and you could see on the map everywhere you'd gone. I mean, it's a level of privacy, I think, that we don't even kind of consider that we wouldn't have. I mean, the writer of the article saying like he could see that he sat on the left side of the church when he went to church. Like that's the side of the, I mean, especially with your phone, I don't think it's as much an issue, honestly, with your Mac, because even if you've got a laptop, it's not necessarily on all the time, but your phone, which might be pinging out there all the time, can give away a lot of information about you that I don't think you really want to share with everyone. What if you just got a divorce or you have a hostile spouse, or, I mean, do you really want someone able to know everywhere you go all the time?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I've often been kind of surprised that we don't see a way to turn on private browsing permanently or completely, that I always have to choose a new private browsing window. And I don't know if that's pressure from, some of the outside sources for all the browsers or not, but it's something that I really do wish that I could default that, okay, every new window I open is a private browsing window. And then if I want to browse in public and let them capture my information, I have that option.
Well, you pretty much can if you open a new private window, which is file new private window, or there's a keyboard shortcut also. If you just continue to surf in there and open tabs in there, they all are private. So it's just a matter of keeping your eye on it. Like you have to start it that way and keep it that way. And the telltale sign is that your smart search bar turns black. So that's the sign. But again, you won't have any history and you won't have any search history either. So that means, if you're trying to get somewhere that you recently were, you're not going to have the kind of hints that you usually would be able. You can't look through your history for it.
Yeah, so. Definite advantages to not having the private browsing on, but some very definite advantages to having it on.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
Shelley, we could go on and on and on. But the one other thing I did want to ask you is third-party apps behavior. I mean, the beta has been out for a long time now, so most developers have had a pretty good chance of getting this up and running. That said, there's almost an infinite number of combinations of different software that can be used with Mojave. Any gotchas you saw there? Anybody that you need to just watch and make sure that their software is up to date if you find it mission critical?
Well, I would say that in general, it's pretty good. It's pretty stable, and it has been out for a while. The one thing that you do need to watch out for is Mojave is the last version of the macOS to support 32-bit apps. So if you have something that you use that is not up to date, up to modern standards, you're going to get warnings every time you try to launch it. It's going to say, Amazon Music is not optimized for your Mac and needs to be updated. And you will not be able to use it with the next release. So it is time to start considering, what are you going to do? How are you going to replace those older apps that you might still use? And in the book, I talk about how to go get a report of every single one that's outdated on your Mac. There's an easy way to do that. So you don't have to wonder. You can go and see legacy software is what they call it.
Right.
But in general, I would say it's pretty stable. The gotchas that you're going to get are just those initial things where you give security approval to some apps that are going behind the scenes more. And I know that there have been some developers that have been really unhappy about that. So if you have some software that really does a lot of automation, does stuff like that, you want to be prepared and maybe do some Google searches to see if there are workarounds or if there are updates coming or if there's something that you need to know to make that work well.
And most of the time you can count on the developers of the, I don't want to say reputable software, but the popular software, because they want you to keep using it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're going to get it updated. So
we haven't talked about one thing that we need to talk about.
Oh, what's that?
I mean, there's lots of cool features. There's 4 new apps, of course. 4 apps have been ported over from iOS, News and Stocks and Voice Memos. And what's the last one? I've forgotten. Home. Home is the last one. So for home automation, those will all come over. That's kind of a big deal. And very handy if you use those because they sync back and forth. So all your preferences come over. But I would say I have one feature which is my favorite feature, and that's quick actions. So do you know about quick actions, Chuck, or do I get to tell you about it for the first time?
Well, whether I know about it or not, tell everybody about it.
So basically, quick actions are not a completely new thing. We, in the past, have had something called services, which was basically when you could borrow a feature of one app in another app, and you got to it through the menu system or contextual menus, and it was really cool. But we told people about it over and over again at Macworld, and people just they weren't visible enough for most people to use on a daily basis. In Mojave, the really cool thing is that they've kind of been rebranded as quick actions, and they're very visible. So when you open a file in the Finder, and you're, say, looking at a list of files, the preview pane, which is now on by default in all the views, will show you quick actions underneath it. So for instance, say you are looking at an image file, you can say rotate left. You just click a button and rotate it. Or you can select 3 images or 3 PDFs and just click create a PDF and make a PDF out of all of those things together. So it's really convenient. And especially because those are things that are so common that people need to do. Like, you import a bunch of photos and they're rotated wrong, or you need to make, people ask me so often, how do I make one PDF out of multiple files? And it's not really hard. It wasn't super hard to do before, but now it's very clear how you do it. And it's even easier. The neat thing is, though, is that if you are a person who uses Automator, that you can save Automator workflows as quick actions, and then they'll appear whenever you are looking at a file that could use them. So for me, that was so useful making the book. We have an Automator workflow that puts a uniform boundary around images. It's like a little task, but it's a hassle. I would take it and drag it onto the little droplet and, one by one do these. And now all I have to do is either select, multiple images that need the border, and then just click my little quick action that I made. Or what I do probably more often is control click on a file and then select the quick action in the contextual menu. So that's so cool, because our past few versions of the macOS haven't really put a lot of focus on automation, these ways that people can really make their days more efficient. And I thought this was a really clever and super useful way to help people do basic tasks and make it so visible that I really think most people will do it, because it's just right there when you're looking at the file.
Yeah, the Mac is full of those little features that make life easy if you know they're there.
If you know they're there, yeah.
But if you don't, or if you don't get used to using them, then it's a problem. Yeah. So I have not seen a lot of coverage of this, so I'm anxious to try this out, because that sounds like something, you're right, that if you're a right-click person, you're probably familiar with it. But if not,
it's great. And you can use it for audio and video too. There's a trim quick action that's built in, so you just click the trim and you'll see the little handles to trim off the beginning or end of a video or audio clip. It's really handy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I won't be editing this show in that. That's definitely the kind of thing that, especially if you're doing a quick voice memo or something, and you need to gather your thoughts, you can trim all that silence off and make it more efficient. Of course, the book is available at takecontrolbooks.com. It's available now. How much is it, Scholle?
It's $15. A bargain.
And yes, definitely, no question. And I'm sure it's part of a number of bundles at Take Control Books, because I know Joe's objective always is to get you to buy some of these books together so you get a complete package.
We have an upgrading to Mojave, and we also have a Take Control of iOS 12, which is full of new features. So that's another one that I think people will want to be able to really see what they can do with it.
Yeah, Josh has been here to talk about that too. So, yeah. Good stuff. And I always make this point that folks, you're hiring these experts to spend all this time digging through this stuff, so you don't have to. So you can dig right down to it and figure out what's important. And so that's what Scholle's done.
We missed another feature, Chuck.
You know the feature?
One last one.
Okay, what do we have?
Continuity camera. We didn't talk about that.
Oh, you're right. No, go ahead.
That's a whiz-bang feature. So let me explain it just briefly, because people need to know that's in there too. That's a feature. We've had all these continuity features over the past 4 or 5 versions of macOS that help us move between our Apple devices. Continuity camera is this cool thing where if you're working on a document, you can basically just select a menu command, which is insert from iPhone. Your iPhone lights up, and then you can take a picture, and that picture immediately goes into your document. So it's very handy if, for instance, you have a bunch of receipts you need to put in a document, or you're working on something and you just need a photo just in this one place. It makes it really easy. It works in the best Apple way, generally is magical. It just happens. And that's a fun thing that I think people will want to check out and then see how they think that might help them in their work and in their play.
And to be clear about that, though, you don't have to be on the same Wi-Fi network. It's peer-to-peer.
Well, you actually do need it. You don't have to have handoff turned on, which originally I thought you did, but a very nice person from Macworld Germany sent me an email and helped me figure that one out. But you do need to you need to have Bluetooth on, you need to be on the same Wi-Fi network, and you need to be signed into the same iCloud account. So like Universal Clipboard and a bunch of those other features, there are a bunch of, and that's for security, I'm sure, as well as just for the technical way that things are shared. It's your devices that you can do this between, not you and somebody else's devices.
Start snapping pictures and sending them into the document that my boss is developing. Now, that's probably not a good idea. Yeah. Scholle, we never get enough time with you. I know you have a very busy life, but it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming back and talking to us about this. And thank you for Take Control of Mojave. I know I will be using it as a guide for me to get up and running a little bit faster. Thanks, Chuck. It's always fun to come talk to you. All right. Do it more often, please. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Again, TakeControlBooks.com is where you will find Take Control of Mojave by Scholle McFarland. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple Tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.